High availability. AutoSys Workload Automation installation on Linux and high availability with dual event server mode. In this module, we will learn how to install AutoSys Workload Automation on Linux and high availability with dual event server mode. This installation has three parts. Install the primary scheduler and configure the database for dual event server mode. Install the shadow scheduler. And install the tiebreaker scheduler. Prerequisites and considerations. AutoSys Workload Automation installation prerequisites. These requirements apply to the primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers. To perform an AutoSys installation on Linux, log in as sudo or root user. Verify whether the IP address that the hostname command returns matches the IP address that the nslookup command returns. An instance of CAEM must be installed and accessible. Install the database client tool and ensure there is connectivity with both databases. If there is no sufficient space available in the $tempter, you can set the IA-tempter environment variable to configure the temp location to a path in which there is sufficient space. For more information, refer to the AutoSys Workload Automation documentation. Considerations for installing dual event servers. Install and configure the two databases before installing AutoSys, and set the appropriate configuration parameters. The two event servers must reside on two different database servers, running on different computers, to avoid a single point of failure. The two event servers must have unique names. Both databases must be the same type, for example, Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server. The scheduler does not start unless it can connect to both databases. The two event servers' system time is synchronized. For more information, refer to the AutoSys Workload Automation documentation. Consideration for installing the primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers. Running AutoSys Workload Automation in high availability mode requires both primary and shadow schedulers. Running AutoSys Workload Automation in high availability mode with dual event servers requires primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers. The scheduler computers must have the application server and agent installed. The primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers are at the same release level. The primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers must all have the same instance name. The primary, shadow, and tiebreaker schedulers must use the same type of database and must connect to the same primary and secondary event servers. For more information, refer to the AutoSys Workload Automation documentation. In this video, we will demonstrate the installation and configuration of AutoSys Workload Automation on Linux and high availability with dual event servers on Microsoft SQL Server. Here we have three servers. The primary server AEPRI, the secondary server AESEC, and the tiebreaker server AETIE. First, we will install the AutoSys primary server and configure the dual event servers. On the primary server, we mount the Linux AutoSys server installation DVD and execute the install program. The installation wizard appears. Press Enter to continue. Type 0 to skip to the end, and enter Y to accept the license agreement. Press Enter to choose option 1 for product installation. Type 2 for custom installation. Press Enter to install the Java bundled with the product. We press Enter to keep all the AutoSys components selected by default. These are the components required by the AutoSys server. The installation path appears. We press Enter to use the default path. The shared components installation path appears. Press Enter to use the default path. We will use ACE as the AutoSys instance name. For this demo, we press Enter to use the default key for data encryption between managers and agents. However, in a production environment, this is not recommended. The best practice is to select the option to encrypt data using a user-defined key. Press Enter to use the instance-level encryption values as agent encryption values. Select the No option for FIPS 142 encryption. We are not going to install AutoSys in clustered environment. Select option 1 to use the Microsoft SQL Server database. Enter 1 to configure the dual event servers. We enter 1 to create the schemas for the primary and secondary databases. In the primary event server properties, we type in the database server name for the primary database. The database name. And the database port 1433. Enter the database administrator username and password for the primary database. We will use the SA admin user. Here you confirm whether you want to use the same admin credentials for the secondary database. Type 1 for yes and press Enter. Now, we enter the secondary event server database information. We type in the database server name. The database name. The database port 1433. Now, we enter the database username for AutoSys. We press Enter to use the default name AutoSys, and enter the password the user will have. This user will be created during the installation. We enter the CAEM server name. And the CAEM administrator user password. Press Enter to accept the default auxiliary port 7507 for the scheduler. We want to configure high availability, so we choose the option 1. This server will act as the primary scheduler. Therefore, we will choose option 1. We enter the application server information. We will install the application server also on this server. Press Enter to select the default. Press Enter to select the application server's default port 9000 and the auxiliary port 7500. Press Enter to select the default REST communication port 9443. Press Enter to select the default agent name. We will not use port multiplexing at this time. Press Enter to select the No option. Press Enter to keep the default 7520 agent port number. We will not enable the SNMP capability. We press Enter to select the 9000 application server port. We press Enter to select AutoSys for the owner and group name to be assigned to the AutoSys files. We will not start the AutoSys services immediately after the installation. Press Enter. Press Enter to select the services to start at system startup. Press Enter to start all selected services at system startup. Select option 2. Enter your company domain. Just as an example, we enter Broadcom.com. Enter the Broadcom Enterprise Site ID for your company. Press Enter to continue. We will not activate telemetry at this time. Press Enter to select the No option. We are not going to define a proxy to send usage data. Now we are ready to start the installation. Press Enter to review the installation options. These are the options we have selected. The primary-secondary databases. We will create the database schema for both databases. This server will be the primary server. We press Enter and the installation begins. The installation has been completed successfully. We press Enter to exit the installation. With this, we have finished the installation of the AutoSys primary scheduler with dual event servers. Now we are going to install the shadow scheduler. We go now to the next server to install the shadow scheduler. We go to the Linux AutoSys installation DVD we have mounted and execute the install program. The installation wizard appears, and we press Enter to continue and type 0 to go to the end. We enter Y to accept the license agreement. We select the option 1 to install the product. The installation mode will be custom. Select the option 1 to install the Java bundled with the product. We will keep the AutoSys server components selected by default. Press Enter. This is the AutoSys installation path. We press Enter to use the default. This is the shared components installation path. We press Enter to use the default. The name of the instance must be the same as the instance name of the primary, which is ACE. For instance-level data encryption, select the same option as for the primary server. In our case, we choose option 1. We select the same option as for the primary server. Option 1. To use the instance-level encryption values also for the agent. Select the No option for FIPS 142 encryption. We are not going to install AutoSys in clustered environment. Select option 1 to use the Microsoft SQL Server database. Select option 1 to configure dual event servers. We are not going to create the database schema as it was already created during the AutoSys primary server installation. Select option 2. Enter the AutoSys database username and the password created during the primary installation. Press Enter to keep AutoSys username and enter the password. Enter the database server name for the primary database. In the database name, the database port is 1433. Press Enter. Enter the name of the secondary event server database. In the database name, press Enter to keep the 1433 port. We keep the default auxiliary port for the scheduler. Press Enter. We select Yes to configure high availability. This time we select the Shadow Scheduler option since we are installing the AutoSys Shadow Scheduler. We select this server as the application server. In the default port, an auxiliary port. We also keep the default REST communication port and use the default agent name. We will not enable the agent port multiplexing. Press Enter to keep the default agent port number. We will not enable SNMP. Press Enter to select the default value of 9000 for the application server port. Press Enter to select AutoSys as owner name and group name to be assigned to the AutoSys files. We will not start the AutoSys services after the installation. Press Enter for No. Instead, we will start them at System Startup. Press Enter to select all the services to start at System Startup. Select Option 2. Enter your company domain. Just as an example, we enter Broadcom.com and the Broadcom Enterprise Site ID for your company. We will not activate telemetry at this time. We will not use a proxy to send usage data. We are ready to begin the installation. Before, let's review the installation summary. This instance will use dual event servers, and we are not going to create the database schema. The scheduler will be in high availability and will act as the shadow scheduler. We press Enter to begin the installation. The installation has been completed successfully. We press Enter to exit the installation. The next step is installing the tiebreaker scheduler. We go to the tiebreaker server. We are going to install the AutoSys tiebreaker scheduler on this server. This server is only required if we are using a dual event server configuration. We go to the Linux AutoSys installation DVD and execute the install program. The installation wizard appears. Press Enter to continue. Type 0 to advance to the end. Enter Y to accept the terms of the license agreement. Select Option 1 to install the product. Choose Option 2 to select the custom installation. Press Enter to install the Java bundled with the product. Press Enter to keep the AutoSys server components selected by default. Press Enter to use the default AutoSys installation path. We press Enter to use the default shared components installation path. The name of the instance must be the same as the instance name of the primary and shadow servers, which is ACE. For instance-level data encryption, select the same option as for the primary and shadow servers. We choose Option 1. We select the same option as for the primary and shadow servers to use the instance-level encryption values for the agent. Press Enter to not enable the FIPS 142 encryption. We will not configure this instance in clustered environment. We will use the Microsoft SQL Server database. We are using dual event servers. Choose Option 1. We will not create the database schema because we already created it during the installation of the primary server. We enter the database user we created for AutoSys when we installed the primary server. Press Enter to select the default AutoSys and enter the password. Here we enter the primary event server database name. And the name of the database. The port will be the same, 1433. Now we enter the secondary event server database name. And the name of the database. The database port is 1433. Press Enter to select the default scheduler auxiliary port. Enter 1 to configure high availability. We select Option 3 to install the tiebreaker scheduler. We have already installed the AutoSys primary and shadow schedulers. We need to install the tiebreaker because we are using dual event servers configuration for the database. We select this server as the application server, and the default port and auxiliary port. We select the default for the REST communication port and the default agent name. We don't enable port multiplexing at this time. We keep the default agent port. We will not enable the SNMP option. We press Enter to select the application server port. Press Enter to select AutoSys as owner name and group name to be assigned to the AutoSys files. We will not start the AutoSys services after installation. Instead, we will start the services on System Startup. Press Enter to start all the services at System Startup. Select Option 2. Enter your company domain. We enter Broadcom.com only as an example. And also, your Broadcom Enterprise Site ID. Press Enter. We will not activate telemetry at this time. Press Enter. We will not use a proxy to send usage data. Press Enter to display the installation summary. The most important is to check that we will install the tiebreaker scheduler. We press Enter to begin the installation. And it has finished successfully. Press Enter to exit the installer program. With this, we have completed the installation of the 3 necessary servers to have high availability with a dual event server configuration: the primary server, the secondary server, and the tiebreaker. We have finished the installation part. Now we are going to start the services and verify how they behave together. After installing the 3 components, the primary, the shadow, and the tiebreaker scheduler, we execute the eventer command to start the scheduler on each server and see how the scheduler behaves. On the primary scheduler server, we can see the system is running in dual server mode, with the primary event server database and the secondary event server database. The primary scheduler startup is completed. Let's go now to the shadow scheduler server. On the shadow scheduler server, the system is running also in dual server mode. On the tiebreaker, the system is running in dual server mode and the scheduler is active. On the shadow server, the scheduler is active. We go back to the primary server. The event servers are in high availability, and the primary and secondary database server's status is normal. And the system is running in high availability mode. On the shadow server, we also get the message the system is running in high availability mode with the primary and secondary event servers. And the same happens with the tiebreaker server. We have confirmed the schedulers are working in high availability with dual event servers. With this, we have completed the installation of AutoSys on Linux in high availability mode with dual event servers. In this module, we have learned how to install the primary scheduler on Linux, configure the dual event server mode, install the shadow scheduler on Linux, install the tiebreaker scheduler on Linux. The tiebreaker scheduler is only required when using the dual event server mode.